Alright, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafil mursalin, rabbi shrah li sadri, yassir li amri, wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. In the name of Allah, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy, and praise and blessings be on his beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alhamdulillah. So I told one of my students before I came that I was telling her, mashallah, I love Sheikh Aisha, and I'm like, it's such an honor to be sitting here just because I look up to her so much, and you guys are her community, mashallah. And I was telling one of my students, I'm like, oh, I have to fill in for someone that's much cooler than I am. They're like, they're not much cooler than you. And then I told her it's Sheikh Aisha, and she just goes, oh. No, and then she tries to say that, and she's just like, you're cool too. And I'm like, thanks, I appreciate it. Alhamdulillah, I have so much love for Sheikh Aisha, and just, I don't know, you guys are her people, so I love her, and love you guys too, alhamdulillah. Yeah, alhamdulillah. But so part of what and I know I'm just visiting, but if you have any comments or thoughts or whatever it is, please feel free to share at any point. This is intended to be interactive. So she asked me today to talk about just perspectives in terms of prayer itself. And I wasn't completely sure whether she specifically meant salah or dua, but that's an important distinction of salah is the prescripted specific form of worship that we do. And it's the mandatory is the 5 times a day. And then dua is just a general point where you call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all hours of the day. It's spontaneous, it's personal, it's at any time. The word dua specifically means to call from da'wah, either an invitation or to just call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the salah, it actually means link. So it's the sila between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Sheikh, if you have anything to contribute.
I have nothing to add.
But subhanAllah, it's really interesting, and I think salah is actually what makes Islam, essentially, this is the most fundamental part of our worship. And my understanding is that before, in the last couple of weeks, that Sheikh Aisha actually covered the shahada. And what's really interesting, part of what we were talking about earlier today, is there's understanding who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and then applying our worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So and this isn't just true for us, this is true of every person that has ever worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every prophet since the beginning of time, when they worshipped Allah, they made sujood. And it's an honor and a dignity for us, it's a continuation through humanity. And part of the way that we know how we do our salah now is that we have 1400 years worth of people that have taught one generation after another to pray. So the Quran tells us to pray, but the Prophet ﷺ said, pray the way that you saw me pray. And now we have people that saw the Prophet ﷺ, that saw his students, that saw their students, that kept seeing people praying up until we got to this point now. SubhanAllah. Cool? The Prophet ﷺ, does everyone know the beginning of the revelation that the Prophet ﷺ first started receiving the revelation? So the moment where the Prophet ﷺ actually became a prophet is that a couple of months before, sorry, I didn't mean to put it in quotation marks, he is totally a prophet, that was my own, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, astaghfirullah. But assuming that he was living his life beforehand, but part of his life beforehand is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made beloved to him being in seclusion, this process of reflection. So he would go out to the cave of Hira, and he would sit there and he would reflect for extended periods of time. And has anyone been to Ghar Hira? A few people, mashallah. Ghar Hira is actually pretty small. It's a cave that fits about a person and a half. And now you see the stupid clock tower. But before you would essentially see Mecca. So he's reflecting, he's worshipping, he's also seeing his city from a distance, he's seeing the Kaaba. And all of it is the reflection of himself, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his role in society. What does all of this mean? And in one of those moments, a man comes to him in impeccable white clothes, and he walks directly to him as if he knows him, and he tells him, read. And the Prophet ﷺ initially is looking at this man, and he's telling him, Ma ana biqari, I don't read and write. And then the man holds the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, he held me so tightly, حَتَّى بَلَغَ مِنِّي الْجَهْدِ, until I got to a point, I'm struggling to get out, and I got to a point where he just wore me out. I couldn't break free. And then he released it. And then he told him again, Iqra, read. And he told, I don't read. He repeated it again, and again he held him. And the Prophet ﷺ is saying, I kept trying to break free, and I couldn't break free. Clearly this man was so strong. And he kept trying to break free until he's saying, I got to the point that he wore me out. بَلَغَ مِنِّي الْجَهْدِ, I was so worn out. And then he released him. And then the third time he told him, read. So then the third time the Prophet ﷺ tells him, what do I read? Because iqra in Arabic doesn't just mean read as in written in a piece of paper. It could also mean to recite, could also mean to proclaim something. It has a number of different meanings. It could mean a number of things. And he tells him, read in the name of your Lord who created. SubhanAllah. And this is the beginning of the revelation. This is the beginning of this Prophet ﷺ. From that moment forward, he becomes not just Muhammad the man, he's Muhammad ﷺ, the messenger of God. This is the first interaction that he had with Jibreel alayhi salam. The next 23 years is him calling people to Islam, all the ups and downs. Very shortly thereafter, one of the first things that he learned was that Jibreel alayhi salam came and taught him Salah. He taught him how to pray. So he took him somewhere, he tapped the ground until water started coming out, he taught him how to make wudu, he showed him how to pray 2 rak'ahs, he prayed 2 rak'ahs, and then the Prophet ﷺ went and taught Khadija radiallahu anha in exactly the same way that Jibreel alayhi salam taught him how to make wudu and how to pray. He taught Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu anha how to make wudu and how to pray. So very early on, this foundation of Salah being foundational to our tradition isn't just for us as people, because it's also for the Prophets themselves. This is the spiritual food that we have that brings us again and again and again to Salah. SubhanAllah, it is literally the connection that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why it's spaced out throughout our day. I need to consistently disconnect from the world, go back to my purpose in creation, refocus, and then I can go back to my life. SubhanAllah. I had one of the ayat that mentions this. The Quran says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna salata tanha an fahsha'i wal munkar. The salah keeps you away from things that are shameful and evil. So if someone's like theoretically doing salah and then lying and cheating, and then doing salah and then lying and cheating, they're not talking to Allah. Like, I don't know what you're doing, you're exercising, you're not talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if we actually were in that moment connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that is salah. That is your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what's so stunning about it, we're standing, again, what makes us distinct from other religions is that we speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. We don't go through a mediator, we don't have to confess our sins to someone else, you speak to Allah directly. You speak to the creator of the universe. And that's not to go on a tangent, but the fact that the creator of the universe can hear everyone's salawat and everyone's dua at all times, that's subhanAllah. We talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala having a personal relationship with Allah and it being very intimate, but also the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can have an intimate conversation with so many people across the globe all the time, subhanAllah. It's the definition of His majesty. The idea isn't that I'm praying and then I'm floating and being this perfect being. There's no such thing as perfection for any human being. The fact that I'm human means that I'm imperfect. And part of the reflection of my own imperfection in Salah, I'm reflecting on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection. And that being able to balance that. So there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ asked the companions, he told them, what if someone had a river outside of their house and bathed in it 5 times a day? They said, Ya Rasulullah, there wouldn't be an ounce of dirt on this person. He said, that is essentially what Salah is. It's not saying that I never make mistakes. It's that any time I make a mistake, I still come back and refocus and repurpose. Especially with habits, they tell you if you want to change a habit, you have to attach it to another habit. And this is part of why Salah is so fundamental, that we do it every day. Once you establish the habit of Salah, it makes establishing every other habit easier. So if between Dhuhr and Asr I messed something up, then I'm like, okay, Ya Allah, I pray Asr. I'm going to try to not do it between Asr and Maghrib. And if you mess it up 100 times, still the next Salah, you come as hopefully as genuinely as you can. Having said that, there's a point, I had a conversation with someone, they were saying, if Salah is an expression of love, why does it have to be so regimented? And this is a random funny example. My husband takes out the trash so often, it doesn't occur to me to take out the trash. And I promise you, he never woke up one morning thinking, yay, today I get to take out the trash. But his consistency in it, that is an expression of love. And it's kind of, the consistency of it is an expression of love. Your parents taking you to school every single morning. someone feeding you every single day, that is the greatest expression of love. Consistency is an expression of love, and it's arguably the highest expression of love. That even when I screw up, I still go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be like, I know I messed up, but I'm trying. The other thing that I think is really beautiful, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to pray, is Him saying, I want to accept this from you. I've given it to you. Because we think of our salah as something I'm doing, and if we reframe it and think Allah allowed me to pray, suddenly I'm very grateful for my prayer, and suddenly I'm looking forward to the next prayer. SubhanAllah. One of the other conversations we were having today was specifically about dua. Us being able to make dua, having the conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first place, that is Allah accepting us. Like if you walk into, go and spend time, having a conversation with someone is that relationship. If the person at the end of the discussion doesn't necessarily give you exactly what you had prescribed, it's not necessarily that, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, that Allah wasn't listening. It's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks that there's something better for it than what you are asking. I wanted to specifically talk about Surah Al-Fatiha, because this is the most fundamental part of our salah. And there's difference of opinion, like there's, within the Shafi'i madhab, for your salah to actually count, you have to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. There's several other madhab that essentially say that if the imam is reciting Fatiha, then you listen, and you don't have to recite it yourself. But the idea of salah, Surah Fatiha being so central to the salah is really, really important. And if we're praying 5 times a day, then we're reciting this 17 times a day. This is something that is really, really important, foundational to our relationship with Allah. Also, what's beautiful about Surah Fatiha, and we can talk about Surah Fatiha for days on end, and I promise you, we'll still only be scratching the surface. Because Surah Fatiha is like the cliff notes of the Quran. It's the summary of the Quran, and we know this because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us through His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But there's a very interesting hadith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a hadith Qudsi. Do you guys know what hadith Qudsi is? So hadith in general is something the Prophet ﷺ is, and essentially anything that came to us from the Prophet ﷺ that is not the Quran itself. And a hadith Qudsi is where the Prophet ﷺ is speaking, where Allah subhanahu is relaying something to us, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking in the first person. It's not the Quran itself, but it's still Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking in the first person. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in this hadith, قُسِمَتِ الصَّلَاةُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ عَبْدِي نِصْفَيْنِ. Salah has been divided between me and my servant into 2 halves. And in this hadith, the whole hadith, the crux of it is about Surah Fatiha. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is saying, I didn't divide Surah Fatiha, He's saying, I divided Salah. And part of the reason you do that is you're highlighting something, you're saying, this is the most important thing that is here. This is the most important part of the Salah. So if you go somewhere and you, I don't know, what's really good food? I can say, I ate the samosas and the food. I'm saying the samosas are the most important part of the food. This is the most delicious part. I'm highlighting this. So then if I say I went there and I got this, yeah, I might have eaten, like I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, I also drank water. I also did this, because it's not as significant as the thing that I'm highlighting. Sorry, that was a really random example. I don't know why samosas were on my mind. Alhamdulillah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, astaghfirullah, to Allah is the greatest example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I've divided salah between me and my servant into these 2 halves. فَإِذَا قَالَ عَبْدِي. So when my servant says, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, approximately translates to, praise be to God, the Lord of the worlds. Hamd is gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's thanks, but it's also praise. Because you can thank someone and for a good deed, but not necessarily be generally praising them. Hamd encompasses both. I'm thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I'm also praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in general. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't just our Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord of every creation on earth. We had a recent interfaith event, and it's so fascinating because there was a discussion that was something similar that they repeat every day in their prayers, and it's saying, praise be to the Lord that gave us the Torah, where it was again really specifically to our Lord. Because I'm not saying just my Lord, I'm making it general. Rabbil Alameen. The Alam, and Alam is there's Alam al-Naml, the world of ants, all of the ants. Alam al-Bani Adam, the world of human beings. the world of all of these different things, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is collectively saying the Lord of all of the worlds. SubhanAllah, something cool that I just learned because I'm an Arabic nerd. Actually from Imam Suhaib. You would say alameen, and you would use that form for something that has intellect. The majority of things on earth don't have intellect. So when we say the world of the rocks are inanimate objects. But we honored and dignified even the rocks based on the dignity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us as human beings, that we can even praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So beautiful. So the hadith is saying, so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in this hadith, so when my servant says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and says, Hamidani Abdi. My servant has thanked me. Because we're in Salah and we're like, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Every time you say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of the universe is responding to you saying, my servant has thanked me, has praised me. SubhanAllah. There was one Sahabi, he would recite in Surah Al-Fatiha, he would say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Stop. He's listening to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, he's not actually hearing a voice, but he's waiting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's response. And then he says, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, SubhanAllah, the next verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when إِذَا قَالَ عَبْدِي Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, when my servant says Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman, it comes from the same word as Rahmah, which means, essentially it means almost unconditional love. Rahmah is giving love and giving good even when you're not expecting anything back. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most extreme version of that. So Ar-Rahman is the extreme of mercy. SubhanAllah. And Ar-Rahim is the most consistent in mercy. Fun and random Arabic fact. How do you say hungry in Arabic? Jo'an. So the an at the end of the word doesn't mean that I'm hungry. It means I'm on the brink of death. If you don't feed me, I will stop existing. Because Arabs are just that dramatic. Ja'a is hungry. I'm hungry. I'm experiencing hunger. Jaw'an is an extreme of hunger. So Rahman is an extreme of Rahmah. It is the epitome of Rahmah that there is nothing beyond it. I'm Arab, so I get to make fun of the Arabs. And I'm sorry if I offend any of the Arabs. I promise I'm doing it with love. Ar-Rahim is the one that is consistent in something. That you would do something again and again and again and again until it would become one of your qualifiers and one of your names. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, when my servant says Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and says, Athna alayya abdi. My servant has mentioned my good characteristics, my good attributes. And then when the person says, Malik yawmiddin, فَإِذَا قَالَ عَبْدِي مَالِكِ يَوْمِ الدِّينِ, the owner of the day of judgment. Just small nuance. There are different recitations of the Quran, and you can't encompass the meaning of the Quran until you understand all of them. And they all go back to the Prophet ﷺ. They're all things that we've learned from the Prophet ﷺ. One of the recitations says Malik Yawmiddin, and one says Malik Yawmiddin. Either the king of the day of judgment or the owner of the day of judgment. This is why if you check the Uthmani script in the Quran, it says Malik with a little alif, because you can read it either way. SubhanAllah. A king manages something that is large and expansive. And an owner manages things that are small. I own my water bottle. I am not the queen of my water bottle. I would have a lot of weird issues if I thought I was the queen of the water bottle. Because it's small. But when you put the two meanings together, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment is managing the macro and the micro. That nothing escapes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. SubhanAllah. And it's just a beautiful nuance of how we recite the Quran. SubhanAllah. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, when my servant says, the Malik Yawmiddin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and says, Majjadani abdi, my servant has glorified me. And then فَإِذَا قَالَ عَبْدِي إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and says, هَذَا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ عَبْدِي, this is my relationship with my servant. And إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, it means you alone do we worship, Ya Allah, and you alone do we seek your aid. So the original sentence is na'budu iyyaka, we worship you. But when you switch the order in Arabic, it's to imply exclusivity. That it's not just saying we worship Allah, it's saying we only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah. So if I say Alhamdulillah, I'm thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when I say Lillahi alhamd, I say that it only belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a slight difference in the meaning, subhanallah. So it's saying, Ya Allah, only you do we worship and only you do we seek your aid. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and says, هَذَا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ عَبْدِي وَلِعَبْدِي مَا سَأَلَ. This is the relationship between me and my servant, and for my servant whatever they ask. So then what do we ask? What's the next ayah? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Ya Allah, guide us to the straight path. The path of those you have blessed, not those who have incurred anger or those who have gone astray. Where the blessing is attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the anger and the going astray is attributed to the people that did it to themselves. SubhanAllah. We say this 17 times a day. Can you imagine someone asking for something 17 times a day? And then ever imagining that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'd ask him 17 times a day, Ya Allah, guide me to the straight path, and be like, I'm not going to accept. Astaghfirullah. There's hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a servant would worship Allah for 40 years, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have so much hayat to not accept this person. So many times this person is again and again and again asking, Ya Allah, guide me to the straight path. I met this woman. She was like this really famous actress in Egypt. So I don't know if anyone's... Anyways, she was this really famous actress. And she went to Hajj, and she meets this very religious woman. She's like, oh, I know your type. You're going to tell me and my whole life is haram, and everything I do is haram. And she asked her, she's like, do you pray? She's like, yeah, I pray. She told her, no one asks Allah, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, guide us to the straight path 17 times a day, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't accept them. Allah will guide you, I'm not worried. As long as you're praying, I'm not worried. SubhanAllah. And this is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again and again and again and again. One of the beautiful examples one of my teachers gave, he says you can take a rock, you can dump a bunch of water on it, and it doesn't do anything. That same rock, one drop at a time, in the same spot. It eats through rock. The water can eat through rock. You get to a point and you pray for years, and then you get to a point and be like, I get that now. Allah gives you these spiritual openings. And then you get to this other moment in your life and be like, that's what that was about. Took me 10 years worth of praying. But you get to the end of it and you're like, okay, I understand why. SubhanAllah. Salah is so beautiful, but at the same time, it's still supposed to bring us back to this point, where the goal of our worship and the goal of everything we're doing is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better. There's an ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And I have not created jinn, they also have free will, they live among us. Most of them are good. I won't go on a jinn tangent, I'm sorry, I will not go on a jinn tangent. The jinn and ins, humankind, we both have free will. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying the only purpose in creating the jinn and the ins in the first place is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Abdullah ibn Abbas, he's one of the greatest scholars that ever walked the face of the earth. The Prophet ﷺ specifically made dua for him. He was one of the Sahaba. He was a young man when the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ passed away, but he later became one of the greatest Sahaba. And one of the reasons that he became such a great Sahaba, he saw a lot of the other Sahaba getting older. He's like, well, we have to learn all the stuff they know. He went and learned from all of the Sahaba. The Sahaba, the elder Sahaba, they'd open the door in the morning and they'd find him sleeping against the door, and he'd kind of fall in and be like, okay, get up. He was relentless in his pursuit of learning everything the Prophet ﷺ left behind. He said the interpretation of this ayah, the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And ibadah ay al-ma'rifah, to know Allah. And hopefully every time you pray, it brings us closer to an understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Spirituality is a process. And there's days where you're praying and you're like, I'm just not feeling it. There's days where you're going to pray and be like, that was the best salah ever. And other days where you pray and you're like, I'm not feeling it today. Imagine your parents being like, I'm not feeling like taking you to school today. You do it anyway. And Allahu Alam, maybe you doing it even when you're not feeling it will get you more reward than when you're doing it when you feel it. Me doing what, I don't know, my husband and I doing things for each other that I don't want to do. He's really into cameras. Every gift I got him since we got married was camera related. I don't know anything about cameras. I couldn't care less. SubhanAllah, it was so much more meaningful to him because it's not something I know or care about at all, but I went out of my way to try to figure out what he liked. Whereas if I'm getting a gift that is like clothes that I like, that is somewhat selfish. Because I'm like, I don't like that shirt. Here's another shirt. That's different. There's clearly a difference between the two things. SubhanAllah. You praying even when you're not feeling it, that is an act of worship. That is an expression of love. SubhanAllah. May Allah allow us all to get there, inshallah. Keep us consistent in our prayer. SubhanAllah. Also, the interesting thing about the idea of consistency is as long as life is good, things are mostly going my way, I'm okay, I'm in a good place, Salah is generally pretty easy. It's when you start getting tested with things that you're like, oh, now I need to run to my Salah. This is the point where I really, really, really need this. SubhanAllah. So in terms of even building up the habit, try to make sure that you're hitting the times as much as you humanly possibly can, and hitting the positions. And as you start learning, learn Surah Al-Fatiha first. And then over time, it'll come, inshallah. May Allah make it easy. SubhanAllah. It is such a beautiful thing, SubhanAllah. You convert, and then the first thing that people learn is the Salah. SubhanAllah. And once you get that down, inshallah, it's much easier from there. Also, the beauty of being a new convert is that you're on a spiritual high, which Allah will hopefully make the Salah easier. Everyone make dua for everyone. Like, hopefully the goal is that we all hang out like this in Jannah and we just like, I don't know. Then you can like matrix out every language and be like, and now I know Arabic because it's Jannah. And now I have everything that I've ever struggled with. I just matrixed it out. I just, even for non-converts, like I grew up with both Arabic and English. The first time I opened the translation of the Quran in English because there's parts of my life that I only think about in English. It's the weirdness of growing up with two languages. And there's points where I was reading it and I was like, it felt like a spiritual breakthrough. Because it's the language that I think in. So even if you grew up your whole life Muslim, still we're responsible for the meanings of the Quran, not necessarily just exactly the words. There are people that have memorized the Quran, that's incredible, mashallah. We don't all have to do that. If we all can, mashallah, but we don't all have to do that. What we do have to do is understand what it means. I think it's interesting because I was talking to someone, like, it's important. We're valuing Arabic because it is the language of the Quran. Abu Jahl was a man at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and he fought the Prophet ﷺ tooth and nail. He understood Arabic better than I ever will. It did not help him much. Actually, it probably was used against him because he didn't use anything that he understood. And this is why it's like, yes, we're learning the Arabic, but also we're learning the meanings far more than we are learning exactly the letters. Allahu A'lam. I wouldn't say prerequisites. There's certain things that can, when Riyadh billah, may Allah protect us, stop from your dua from being answered. And there's recommended time. So one of the things, for example, that would stop your dua from being answered is eating money that's haram. Like if you're stealing your money and trying to feed your family, why do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would accept your dua? And there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that this person, their food is haram, their clothes are haram, and they want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept their answer. To answer their dua. Like you don't harm other people, you don't steal it. Like you can't rob the bank and be like, I bought a prayer rug, good for you. Nobody cares. Like that's no. Wallahu alam. But then there's recommended times to make dua. And that's after Salah is one of the most recommended times to make dua. And then there's a certain adab to dua. And the adab of dua and the etiquette of doing dua well is to essentially follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just taught us in Surah Al-Fatiha. That you begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You state your need to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where, Ya Allah, you are You control the dominions of the heavens and the earth. I'm poor to you, Ya Allah. You are infinitely powerful, and I'm weak, Ya Allah. And then I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever it is that you need. And one of the beauties of dua is that you ask again, again, and again, and again. We literally just said we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at a minimum 17 times a day. We're asking Allah guide us to the straight path. So if you ask Allah 1,000 times for something, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is listening. And the ability to have that conversation is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala listening to us, whether He gives us exactly what we ask for or not. SubhanAllah. Just a small caveat. Women, when they're menstruating, you make dua all the time. If you are menstruating, you are physically worshipping Allah just in a different form. You are exempt from the physical acts of worship, so during that time you're not doing the physical salah, you're not fasting in Ramadan, you're not doing tawaf if you're in Mecca. But that's prime time to be making dua at all hours of the day. Because your body's physically worshipping Allah, just in a different form. This is one of my favorite ahadith ever. The hadith, there's a shorter version and a longer version of it, but the longer version is saying, Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman, the people of mercy, the most merciful, Ar-Rahman will have mercy on them, Irhamu man fil ard, yarhamukum man fis sama. Have mercy on the people on earth and the one in the heavens, and the ones in the heavens will have mercy on you. So that's one narration of the hadith, and there's a longer narration of the hadith that continues that talks about the womb, the rahim, being attached to the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, whoever fulfills their bonds with her, I will fulfill my bonds with them. Whoever breaks their bonds with her, Allah will cut them off. It's such a threatening hadith, subhanAllah. But this is why women, this is the source of life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings to the earth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I gave the womb a name from my name. It's called Ar-Rahim in Arabic. SubhanAllah, also in Hebrew. So when you're menstruating, make dua the entire time. Engage in dhikr. Just remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just sit there and repeat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name. Say subhanallah, alhamdulillah. Thank Allah. Anything that you remember, that's prime time to be making dua. And then when you are praying, and just for men in general, after every salah is a good time to be making dua. It's a recommendation from the Prophet. Alhamdulillah. Can we talk about the positions? Okay, can I stand up for a second? Okay, I'm just going to stand up if that's okay. We're starting the qibla that way. First, the salah in and of itself is symbolic and encompassing of all of our acts of worship. So the 5 pillars of Islam, we say the shahada within the salah. During salah, I'm fasting and preventing myself from eating, from just talking with other people. I'm in a separate state that is similar to fasting, and I'm facing Mecca the way that I would in Hajj. And then the zakah that I pay in terms of my money, I'm purifying my time with salah the same way that I would purify my money by paying zakah. So salah in and of itself is symbolic of so many of our different acts of worship. So you're standing towards the qibla, and to begin the salah, the first thing that you say is Allahu Akbar. And then there's there's slightly different opinions. Are you raising your hand? Are you covering your ears? Are you putting it like this? And again, these are reflections. These are not necessarily, if I don't think of this, then I did it wrong. The one requirement that I have to do is say Allahu Akbar. But like this, I'm either pushing the whole world behind me, or I'm covering my ears and saying I'm leaving the dunya. I'm leaving the world and I'm entering the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as soon as you say Allahu Akbar, you are now in the beginning of the salah, and the salah is scripted. SubhanAllah. Sit down. What does Allahu Akbar mean? Allah is the greatest? Allah is greater. It's actually almost an incomplete sentence. Allah is greater. Greater than what? Everything. It's by design open-ended. If I'm watching a movie right before and I have to pause it, Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater than whether the dude lives at the end of the movie or not. Allah is greater than whether, I don't know, my boss is angry at me. Allah is greater than whatever it was that was stuck in my head before. And this is why I begin the salah with that. And this is why every time I change positions in salah, I'm saying Allahu Akbar. So even if I start to lose focus, I'm again reminding myself Allah is greater than whatever it is I'm getting lost in. And there's whatever you're thinking about, 5 minutes before salah is what you're going to be thinking about in salah. The more you can clear your mind beforehand, the more you'll be able to focus. But subhanAllah, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, saying I was like moving armies in my head in Salah because he's worried about which way the army is going. He's like, Allahu Akbar. He's like, wait, I'm still moving the army in my head. I need to focus on the Salah. Allah is greater than wherever the army went. So you start off with Allahu Akbar. There's a number of different variations of the dua of istiftah. And this is, if you don't know this one is not a requirement, but if you do have the ability to memorize an extra dua, they're beautiful du'as. And they're all narrated from the Prophet ﷺ. And subhanAllah, part of what Imam Suhaib was talking about before, Fath almost means conquest. I have conquered my ego, I have conquered my time. I'm in control of it because now I'm giving it to its true purpose. Or that it means Fath, where it's literally an opening, I'm open and now ready to receive whatever it is that I'm supposed to receive, subhanAllah. The version of the dua that I follow, that Ya Allah, keep what is between Allah, keep the distance between us and our sins, the distance between the east and the west. Ya Allah, clean us from our sins. Anyone know the dua? I don't know why I'm getting Allahumma naqina min al-khataya kama yunaqqa al-thawb wal-abyad min ad-danas. Ya Allah, purify us from our shortcomings and our sins the same way that you would clean a completely clean white cloth, completely clean it from any impurity or any dirt that might come on it. Allahumma qsilna bil-ma'i wal-thalji wal-barad. Ya Allah, wash us of our sins with water, with ice, and with snow. SubhanAllah. Just a small reflection on that. Water in general is symbolic of revelation. Getting washed with ice is harder. Snow is softer. But there's so many different points in our lives where sometimes the lesson's hard. The lesson is worth it every single time, but the lesson is hard. The Prophet ﷺ himself, he's been through so much in his life. We're not even talking about, who's a refugee that's kicked out of their country, that loses 5 out of 6 of their children during their lifetime, both as children and adults, who sees his friends persecuted and killed because they believed in him. So many struggles that he went through, and this is just scratching the surface of everything he'd been through, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, أَدَّبَنِي رَبِّي فَأَحْسَنَ تَأْدِيبِي. My Lord has taught me etiquette and adab, and God taught me character, and he taught it to me well. Someone being born an orphan, even before they entered the world, before he entered the world, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he already was an orphan in a tribal society where who your father is everything. This determines your worth in society. And he was born when his father had already passed away. And you can either take those experiences and become embittered, or that he became the biggest advocate for orphans till the Day of Judgment. SubhanAllah. Sometimes the struggles are hard. The next part of the Salah, and we're saying this all while we're standing. Just small reflection on standing. We stand on 2 feet. Most creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they walk on all 4s. Part of the dignity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave human beings is that we're intellectual beings. We can think, we can process, we can actually grasp these ideas, and I'm walking, I'm standing, I'm holding my head up high. I get to understand things that other creation don't. I had a funny conversation with, I used to work at youth camps, and one of the teenagers at some point, she's like, man, I wish we didn't have to do all this. This is so hard. And to her credit, there's a lot of Sahaba that said, man, if I had a choice, at least the Rock is not worried about going to the fire if they screw up. This is a heavy test. And she said, I wish I was like the animals. I didn't have to worry about this. She's like, why do we have to do this? SubhanAllah, a cow is never going to be able to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Rahman means. The fact that our hearts have the capacity to understand the creator of the universe, so powerful. That doesn't take anything from cows. Cows are amazing creatures of Allah. But there's they just can't grasp it. The dignity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. I'm standing in my salah and I can stand between the hands of the creator of the universe. What other creation can even say that? And if that doesn't humble us so much, just the ability to stand there, you standing as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanting to accept it from you. It's a gift He gave us. SubhanAllah. We recite Surah Al-Fatiha, and again we said that you recite it 17 times a day. In the first and second rak'ah, you're also adding something short of the Quran. The minimum requirement is at least 3 ayahs, so, and again when I say this for requirement, if you're learning, you take your time, you take the process that it needs to take. But the minimum is at least Surah Al-Kawthar, the shortest surah. You can read or the length of it. So Ayatul Kursi is longer than, it's only one verse, but it's longer than Surah Al-Kawthar. So whatever you can of the Quran. And part of the reason, there's part of the salah that is fixed. Part of the salah is supposed to be whatever you're memorizing, if you're working on something, and when I'm memorizing a surah, oh my God, for a month, I was only reciting the one surah that I'm learning, because it's taking me time to learn it. And I keep, again and again, different part of the surah. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I forgot the beginning of it, now I need to go back and remember the beginning, because I'm halfway through. Whatever it is that you're learning, and the deeper that you dig, the more that you will get out of it. SubhanAllah. I'm in ruku', or when I'm in ruku', I'm saying Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. Glory be to my Lord, the most majestic and consistent in His majesty. SubhanAllah. It's one of the meanings of the word al-Azim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, al-Azim. This now becomes very, very personal. In Fatiha, I'm saying the Lord of the worlds. Now I'm in a different position, I'm saying my Lord. Also, when I'm in that position, your center of gravity is off. If someone pushes me right now, I could probably topple. I will fall over if you push me. If I'm standing, I'm probably going to hold myself a little better. But even in that position where I'm so inconsistent, someone can just touch me and I'll fall over, I'm saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is consistent in His majesty. So every position in and of itself is a reflection of what I'm saying and a reflection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My imperfection is a reflection of Allah's perfection. My need is a perfection of Allah's sufficiency and His lack of need of anyone else. SubhanAllah, the fact that I'm stuck in time and I'm just before class, after class, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond time. He doesn't need to worry. Time doesn't apply to Him. Physical spaces don't apply to Him. I'm stuck in this physical position and Allah, acknowledging that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond it. SubhanAllah. Glory be to my Lord the Most High. And there's longer du'as that you can make. A lot of them are narrated from the Prophet ﷺ. I don't know if anyone's heard this one. Subuh al-Qudus Rabbul Malaikati wal Arshi wa Ruh. That's generally one that you can say, especially in the Sunnah, the extra prayers, Sarawit, things that you're praying besides the 5 mandatory prayers. SubhanAllah. The mandatory prayers are meant to be a check-in. So even if you're not in between class to be that was not a spiritual high, it's still, the reminder is important. I'm going to say Sami Allahu liman hamida, and I'm going to stand up again. So initially when you stand up again, you used to say Allahu Akbar. And then one of the Sahaba, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he had never missed a salah with the Prophet ﷺ. And he got caught up in a meeting and he was running. He gets to the salah, he's in ruku', and he goes into ruku', and instead of saying Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, he's like, oh, Alhamdulillah. I'm so grateful to Allah I made it. And in that moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught the Prophet ﷺ what Abu Bakr radiallahu anh had said. So Abu Bakr is in sujood saying, Alhamdulillah, and the Prophet ﷺ stands up and says, Sami Allahu liman hamida. Allah has heard the one that praised Him. SubhanAllah. So our salah, that part of the salah changed because of the gratitude of a single person in the community of the Prophet ﷺ. You stand up, you say that one, Rabbana wa lakal hamd, Ya Allah, to you belongs all of praise. There was a moment where the Prophet ﷺ, he stood up from salah, and he just stayed. They're waiting for him to go into sujood, and he's he was just there. Long time. Then a while later, he goes into sujood, and then they ask him after the salah, and they're like, Ya Rasulullah, did you forget? They're not saying it to be insulting and be like, hey, did you screw this up? That's not what they were saying. They were saying they still treated him like he was a human being, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sometimes as human beings that you forget. He said, no, I was thinking Allah and I just got lost in it. And one of the ways that we can improve our salah outside of our salah to just sit and reflect on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They always tell you to do this exercise. Before you go to sleep, just make a list of everything you want to thank Allah for that day. Just fall asleep thanking Allah for everything. You just got lost in it, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They're really simple concepts. They're huge, but they're so simple, subhanAllah. We all understand gratitude. He just stood there and thanked Allah. SubhanAllah. From that point, you say Allahu Akbar again, and then you're going into sujood. I don't know if I can. Okay, I won't try to make sujood because then you can't see. But you have your face, your forehead and your nose are touching the ground. So this is touching the ground. My hands, not my elbows. My elbows are not on the ground. My knees and my toes are on the ground. And my toes are curled inward so that they're facing the Qibla too. My entire body is submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why salah in and of itself is just so beautiful. My entire being is submitting to Allah. The sujood, I'm in a position that is somewhat similar to being in the fetal position. It's supposed to bring us, humble us, bring us back to our core. I'm literally putting my face on the ground for the creator of the universe. There's an ayah in the Quran, subhanAllah. Allah protect us from this. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that part of the day of judgment is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks everyone to make sujood. And the people that made sujood in the dunya, they're able to do it. And the people that didn't, you can't come the day of judgment and be like, oh, I believe now. Everybody believes now. There are no veils anymore. The idea is, could you see with your heart while you were in this world? We're surrounded by materialism, but I didn't get lost in thinking the point of my existence is to make more money. What was the point of that? The point of my existence was to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to know Him, and hopefully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for all of us sajda on the day of judgment. When I'm in sujood, I'm saying, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Praise be to my Lord the Most High. Sorry, we didn't talk about Subhan. What is the Alif and Nun? Does anyone remember this? What does this mean? An extensive, an extreme version of something. What does Sabaha mean? To glorify. SubhanAllah means to glorify. But when you swim in Arabic, they say Sabaha, because you're floating on top of the water. That what, like, if you can visualize that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever you can think of, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above it. That's what SubhanAllah means. Anything I can picture, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above and greater than that. SubhanAllah. Subhana Rabbi, my Lord, and the word Rabb is more than just Lord. So like the word Murabbi, the one that raised you, also comes from the same root word. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is consistently involved in our lives. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our consistent teacher. Praise be to my Lord the Most High, Al-A'la. Anything that can think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above it. When I am the most humble, I'm praising Allah the Most High. SubhanAllah. Small, cool reflection. When you're standing, your head is above your heart. You're using your intellect to reflect on the Quran. When you're in ruku', your head and your heart are consistent. They're level. And if you're trying to build consistency in your life, ruku' helps. That's one of the ways of building consistency. SubhanAllah. And then when I'm in sujood, my heart is above my head. I'm putting everything in its rightful place. My heart is supposed to be stronger than my head. There's points where you talk to people and be like, how do I know? But what about Iman? Part of Iman is experiential. Like, you can explain love to people, they don't get it. You have to experience love to understand it. I remember talking to someone, SubhanAllah, may Allah grant us all this. When you talk to someone about loving someone for the sake of Allah, be like, I love you for the sake of Allah. Like, I want to meet you in Jannah. When you're happy, I'm happy. When you're sad, I'm sad. Like, I love you. And I'm not getting any worldly benefit from this relationship. I love you because you love Allah and I love Allah, and that's awesome. I love someone for the sake of Allah. When you first try to explain that to someone, they're like, what does that mean? I remember trying to explain it to someone, they stared at me like I was green. And I'm like, this is a real thing. They're like, sure. In their defense, this poor person had been so burned by another Muslim, unfortunately, may Allah heal their heart. And this is why they were so burned, they're like, I don't know what that's like. They had a very different experience. When you experience love, the very first expression of love that most people have in their lives is their parents. You throw up on your parents and they smile in your face anyway. Alhamdulillah. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, glory be to my Lord the Most High. You sit in between the two rak'ahs. This one is probably the physically most difficult because we don't sit on the floor a lot. But generally speaking, my left leg is flat, and my bottom is sitting on my left leg. And my right foot is in the same position it was in sujood, where my toes are still facing the qibla. In that position, I'm saying, the bare minimum is Rabbi ighfirli warhamni. That, Ya Allah, forgive me and have mercy on me. I was just in sujood. Why am I asking Allah for forgiveness? SubhanAllah, it's acknowledging our own imperfection. Even in my most highest state of spirituality towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I can never thank Allah enough. Ya Allah, forgive me, Ya Allah, have mercy on me. I go back into sujood, and again, repetition is to highlight something. The only positions in salah that we repeat are sujood and standing. This is to repeat the importance of the sujood. I again go into sujood, I'm repeating the same thing. Glory be to Allah the Most High. That's one rak'ah. If you're in Fajr, you add another one, you do the tashahhud at the end. Dhuhr and Asr, you do that 4 times, so you have it the first two sets, you do the tashahhud in the second and the fourth, and then in Maghrib you do it in the second and the third. I know that was a lot. If you didn't catch that, inshallah, that we can sit down and talk about it. Cool? I think it's really beautiful to do this, because even if you've been praying for like decades, still getting back to that moment of like, no, Allah's the one that created me, I need to be more grateful. It's subhanAllah, the infinite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is infinite. And this is why I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every time you get something new. We can, inshallah, we'll end with this in terms of the positions. The tashahhud, I'm saying at-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibat. And there's a couple of slightly different versions of the tashahhud. Again, they all go back to the Prophet ﷺ. I think there's 7 different narrations from the Prophet ﷺ to different Sahaba. Like the one that the Prophet ﷺ taught Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu was different from the one that he taught his son Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. So they're slightly different. But essentially it's saying, greetings, salawat, all beautiful connection, and everything that is good, righteous, and pure belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. SubhanAllah, some of the narrations of the Mufassirun say this, not the Muhaddithun. If anyone knows what that means, great. If you don't care, then never mind. So one of the narrations says that essentially when the Prophet ﷺ rose up to the 7th heaven during the journey of Isra and Mi'raj, that was actually the conversation that the Prophet ﷺ had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ is the only human being that actually stood in that position in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, standing in front of the throne of Allah, saying, At-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibat. Greetings, prayers, and all good things, blessings, all belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself responded to the Prophet ﷺ saying, As-salamu alayka ayyuhan nabi. Salams be to you, O Prophet. Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And the mercy of Allah and all of his blessings. SubhanAllah. The angels saw this interaction. Before that, the Prophet ﷺ, recognizing that he's the only human being to ever be in that position, says, As-salamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi as-salihin. That salams from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, peace be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us and to all of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's righteous believers. And then the angels witness this, subhanAllah, and then their response is, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Then the angels respond and they say, we bear witness that there is no God except Allah and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger. Whether that's actually how it happened or not, part of our salah is thanking the man that taught us about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's an ayah in the Quran, and this is the reason we send salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that Allah, the creator of the universe, sends salawat, this connection and these blessings on the Prophet, and his angels do this where they're sending prayers and blessings on his beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So to follow the same action that Allah and his angels are doing, O you who believe, you should do this too. So part of our salah is gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the messengers that gave us the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that taught us about Him. We wouldn't know how to pray. We wouldn't know that since the beginning of the time, every prophet was making sujood, unless if a prophet came and told us. SubhanAllah. We bear witness that there is no God except Allah and that Muhammad is His messenger. The second part of the tashahhud, Salat Ibrahimiyya, or they call it the Durud Ibrahimiyya, is that you are sending salawat on Allah sending salawat, these blessings on Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family, the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spent salawat and blessings on Ibrahim alayhi salam and his family. So the last prophet and the father of all the prophets, and part of it is almost the summary of prophethood in general. We are grateful to everyone that has ever taught us anything about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the prophets being the forefront of them. SubhanAllah, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ibrahim alayhi salam. Sorry, I'm saying them in my head and translating. And bless Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the family of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam the same way that you have blessed Ibrahim alayhi salam and the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Fil alameen innaka hamidun majid, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts all praise when Allah is all glorified. SubhanAllah. You say to leave the salah, you're saying salams, I'm turning to my right. The narration said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned completely, that you could, anyone that was sitting behind him could see his cheek. Turns completely. There's, again, these are reflections. Either you're saying salams to the angels on the right and the left that are making dua. They're not making dua, they're actually writing down everything that you do. I remember as a child learning this, and I'm like looking to my right and left and be like, guys, we've been friends. Don't write any of my stupid stuff. Only write all the good things. Like, we've been together a while now. Like, you know, help a sister out. And I just remember, because as a child they tell you, you're like, don't screw up, the angels are watching, which is terrifying. The beautiful version of that I learned, one of the teachers was saying, an important person, I don't want to give this person as an example because they're a horrible human being. If you are the president of a country, people write down everything you say and do because you're an important, consequential person. Even if you blunder, like, your blunders have consequence. But essentially, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created angels whose job is to write down everything that you do because you are that consequential. That Allah created beings just to write down what you do. SubhanAllah. When you're leaving salah, re-entering the world, re-entering the dunya, the world, the material world that we live in, I'm saying salams, sending peace to the angel on the right, sending peace to the angels on the left. There's another opinion that says you're actually sending salams to the people sitting next to you in the right and left. Allah alam. And that's how you leave salah.